You can use the exact same tactic to help someone, or you can use the exact same tactic to try to manipulate someone. And the only difference between a good salesperson and a con man is intent. And that's why I'm so emphatic about you have to make it not about you. You have to be willing to put what you want aside for the better of someone else. And until you're willing to do that, you shouldn't be in sales.
Welcome back to the Thoughts on Selling podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to have Carole Mahoney joining as a special guest. Carole and I share some mutual friends. We share some mutual history. We both recently supported Stephanie Boyer at her National Intercollegiate Sales Competition. We've got some other things going on. We both have a love of selling. And let's start with the question that stumps other guests. Mm-hmm. Who is Carole Mahoney? Carole, I know that you can handle this question.
I can handle this question. Carole Mahoney is a nerd. In terms of, I love, in my spare time, I will read neuroscience studies and psychology studies, nerd. And also nerd in the sense of, I love theater, I love music, and I, just start talking about Stranger Things, and we can probably have a whole conversation about that. And I guess even my high school, when I had my reunion, everyone told me I was a hot nerd. And this was before the hot nerd was a thing back in the 90s. So I'm definitely a nerd first. I'm also a pretty big environmentalist. And because I think I was brought up in a family that we spent all of our time in the woods. We went camping, we went hiking, we went fishing and hunting. And I was raised to believe that you leave no trace behind. If you leave a trace, then you leave things in a better place than you found them. And that has been kind of my driving force, is that whether it's relationships or places or people, I love to see things grow, and I love to leave things in a better state than I found them. So I am a nerd who likes to see constant growth and improvement. I don't like things. Things are not important to me. People are important to me. Experiences are important to me. If you want to find a really good gift for me, give me tickets to a concert or go hiking with me. I don't need more stuff.
Where's your favorite place to go hiking?
Oh, gosh. Woods, California is probably my favorite place.
The trees are big there, huh?
They're huge. I was actually, this last year in September, I was speaking at Inbound in San Francisco. And the last time I had been in San Francisco for a conference, I went hiking in Muir Woods. And I was so enthralled by it. I spent the entire day. I did 30,000 steps. I bought all of my family's Christmas presents in the gift shop. So when I went back this year, I'm like, I'm going again. And I went by myself, did another 30,000 steps. I wasn't walking much the next day because I just sat there and just listened to nothing. And it was just this sense of calm and wonder that you can't really find in a lot of other places.
Yeah. I've done a few segments of the Appalachian Trail in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia and up in New Hampshire.
Yep.
Carole, I have to admit, I left something behind. I had a pound of cheese and
I'm sure it's not there anymore.
I way overpacked. I was hurting so bad. I think I had a kitchen sink in my pack. The mistake I made, welcome to Thoughts on Backpacking. The mistake I made was I got a bigger backpack than I needed, and I filled it. And, halfway between two huts, I said, there's some stuff in here I can't carry anymore.
Yeah. Well, and it's that what if I need it, right?
Right.
I know when I pack my bag, it's okay. There's a roll of toilet paper. There's at least 3 bottles of water. There's a couple of snack bars and sunblock and bug spray.
Yep.
And you're tempted to bring more. When I go mountain biking, I have stuff for the bike as well. Yeah. I also had some mace with me.
Yeah, right.
For bears or for people. I've also done that where I've packed too much water. I'm like, okay, we got to drink some of this water because it's getting too heavy.
Yeah. So here's the cool thing about hiking or mountain biking or gravel riding, which I do. You can't be prepared for everything.
Nope.
And you
kind of in sales too, isn't it?
Well, that was the bridge I was going to take.
Oh, I stole your bridge.
It's just like in sales. You can prep. When the customer takes the pivot, you can either go, sorry, can't help you, or you go with the pivot and you go where the customer needs to go. Carole, have you ever done improv?
Yes.
Yes, and?
Yes, and. Well, it's funny. When I did public speaking training, one of the parts, now I'm a musician. And whenever I would play, I would always need to have my sheet music in front of me. It didn't matter how much I had memorized it or anything else. I needed to have the sheet music in front of me. It was like a security blanket. And so when someone told me that I needed to do improv and that there was no security blanket, I was like, this is not going to go well. And what was funny is that I had so much fun that I was like laughing, crying. And so now I love doing it. And so I sometimes will improv like with my husband, and he doesn't even really know that's what I'm doing. But yes, now I have fun with it.
A year ago, so I took a deep dive in improv. So I read Dan Pink's book, To Sell is Human.
Yep.
And he talks about improv
Yeah.
as a great training platform for selling. I took that deep dive and I read, there's a book that he recommended called Improv. And I read that. It was mostly about theatrical improv as opposed to comedic improv. So I joined a local troupe. And then over the holidays last year, my family was around and they said, so what's improv? So my wife had just enough experience of seeing and hearing, what I was doing. We wrote a letter of complaint. Each one of us said one word and the next word. And so it was absolutely fabulous sharing that with the family. And they got a real sense of what improv is. I love it. It pushes me up against my limits and beyond.
We did something similar one year for Christmas here. So I host a big Christmas Eve dinner, and we usually have games and things that are involved. And so one year, it was the year where drunk history was really popular. So we decided to do our own version of drunk history and improv, and just some of the funniest things that came out of my family. But yeah, we have a lot of fun with it sometimes.
So you and I are on similar missions with regard to sales. They're different and related. What's your mission with regard to selling?
So my mission with regard to selling is to change the negative perception that people have of salespeople, the pushy, manipulative, used car salesman. Like you mentioned Dan Pink's book, To Sell is Human, which inspired me to write my book. And he actually wrote the endorsement for my book because I was so inspired by his book. And it's because of this negative perception of sales that so many people don't go into sales. Or if they do go into sales, they think that that's how they have to behave. And so they perpetuate this negative perception. And my mission was also to help small businesses to grow because I grew up in a family of small business owners. And so when I first started my business, it was actually a lead generation agency. We did inbound marketing for people. And what I found was that no matter how many good leads that we would develop for people, their sales team couldn't actually close them. My mission initially was to help small businesses to grow. And so you can't take marketing leads to the bank. You need to learn how to sell to today's internet educated buyer, not the Glenn Glenn Ross techniques of old. In order to do that, I had to figure out how to sell myself, except that I hated sales. That's why I got into marketing, because I hated sales. I wanted to make salespeople obsolete. But what it really was is I wanted to make the pushy, manipulative, con man woman obsolete, where they try to get people to do certain things. It was because of my perception of sales that I was horrible at it, and I avoided it, and I didn't want to do it, which was crippling in my business. So when I realized that in order for me to help small businesses to grow, I need to learn how to sell. What I didn't realize is that I was going to need to change how I thought about sales in order to be good at it. And that was a real transformation for me. I hired a sales coach and I worked with them for years. And not only did it change how I behaved in sales and how I thought about sales, it also changed how I showed up in everyday life. I remember one day when my kid said to me, "You know what, Mom? You yell a lot less than you used to," which was a little bit of a gut punch, but at the same time made me realize that to be a better salesperson, to change the perception of sales, we have to be better people.
And it starts with listening.
And it starts with listening. It starts with being curious. It starts by putting other people first, hence the book, Buyer First. When I started going down this path and realized that my real mission is to change the perception of sales was because, my ex-husband was not a good person. And when I decided that I was going to leave him, he said, "You will never amount to anything more than flipping burgers at McDonald's." And it almost came true until I learned how to sell. And so for me, changing the perception of sales from negative to pushy and manipulative is so that other people will embrace sales and more women will get into sales so that they can create security and financial independence for themselves and their families so that they never have to settle for a relationship that they shouldn't be in.
That's so powerful. And I can see that in your work with Stephanie Boyer at Bryant University and the collegiate sales competition. And just as a shout out, I had one of the 5 finalists from the recent competition on, Nina Iannuzzi, 19-year-old sophomore, UMass Amherst, Eisenberg School. And her quote was, she'd been selling slime to her fellow students since she was 5 years old. And this is the next generation. Some of the people who want to be salespeople are young and eager and motivated, and they don't know that old persona.
Yeah. And I think you're right. That is the real opportunity, because sometimes I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall and trying to get established salespeople who've already learned the bad habits. Get them to unlearn that and shift the perspective is a big lift. But working with Harvard Business School MBA students, working with Stephanie at the Nice competition, and now teaching students at the Emily on Business School in France on the Masters of Sales, what I've realized is that the real opportunity is in teaching the next generation how to be good salespeople, and that the next generation after that and after that, we will change that negative perception of sales without the having to convince everyone that we need to.
You know, it's funny you describe the experience you had with your own business. I've worked with a handful of principals of small professional services firms, and every single one of them had that same chip on their shoulder, that same voice in their ear saying, to sell, you have to have that plaid jacket, you have to be an asshole, you have to look like, you have to be an idiot, etc. And I would say to them, you can let go of that image.
Right.
And be yourself. Share the passion for what you do, and that's okay.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a lot of small business owners that I work with as well, and startup founders, as well as larger and established teams. But in the small business owners and in the startup founders, if I had a dime for every time they said to me, you know what, I need to get more customers, but I don't want to be salesy. And then I asked, well, what do you think salesy is? And I said, okay, good. That's exactly what we're not going to do. So you're good.
So that's an awesome mission. I mentioned that your mission and mine are in alignment and different. When I started the sales productivity practice at IDC in 2006, my stated mission was to fix how the technology industry sells. In my perspective, and I'd been in technology sales for a long time at that point, it's all about the product. It's, here's the latest widget. It's 3.2. 3.1 is old and obsolete. You need to buy 3.2. And nobody gives a shit.
Nope.
Nobody. Does this solve my problem?
Right.
Does this help me save money on cloud expenses? Does this improve my security? Does this allow me to serve my customers better? Many, many years ago, my cousin ran a bike shop, and I said, and he was computer savvy. And I said, BJ, how do you what technology do you use to manage your inventory? He goes, I manage my inventory by walking around. He goes, I have a 3x5 card, and if I see that I'm low on something, I write it down, and then I order it. He goes, I don't need anything more than that. I don't need a fancy $10,000 or $100,000 computer system, inventory system to manage that. And we are so enthralled with technology in the technology world. And it makes sense, right? The high priests of technology get together, they build the latest whiz-bang product, and then they want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's their baby.
Exactly.
Don't call my baby ugly either.
But once you get past the early adopters, once you cross that chasm, thank you, Jeffrey Moore? It wasn't Jeff.
Who termed the early adopters?
It might have been Jeffrey Moore.
Somebody will correct us, I'm sure.
Somebody will correct us. Somebody will write in. Once you get to the early mainstream, they don't give a shit. They just don't. It's like, will this help me drive that nail? No? Okay, next.
It's funny. So my very first corporate job was as a sales coordinator. I didn't want them to call me a salesperson in a startup company. And the majority of the clients that I work with are technology companies. And I kept having to say to them, it is not about you. It is not about your product or your features or any of that. It has to be all about them, which became the inspiration for the book. In fact, one of the companies that I did a lot of work with was HubSpot. They would say, you know what, I keep making, and I would say that, it's not about you. They're like, I need to get that tattooed on my forehead. I'm like, no, you need a t-shirt. And so I created these t-shirts that say, not about me, but it's upside down so the person wearing the shirt can look down and be reminded, because we need the constant reminder. I mean, even in my own business, sometimes I fall into the trap and I have to remind myself, you're doing it again, because we're so excited about what we know and what we can do and how we can help that it just comes off as us pitching, and that's not good.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to join a group at Oracle that focused on the value selling mindset. And for 6 years, we instilled that focus on the customer value selling mindset with curiosity and a point of view and business value hypotheses, the relationship, bank account, understanding where we stand with people. It was a glorious time in an organization that invented the database, helping salespeople to sell databases without talking about databases.
Because value is in the eye of the beholder, not in the person talking.
That's right. Now, of course, on the downside, we also talked about communication styles at Oracle. And I shouldn't say this, but we always said Oracle salespeople had two ways of communicating: talking and waiting to talk.
Is it my turn yet? Yeah.
It's my turn yet. Apologies to my fellow former coworkers. So you're on this mission.
Yeah.
And you've written a book. You donate your time and energy to good initiatives. What else are you doing?
Gosh, there's a lot of things that I'm doing. So we're talking about technology. I am developing some agentic AI to put into a platform to really help people to start to ramp up their learnings and so forth, and help them to do that in a way that is focused on the buyer and, again, not on the technology, on ourselves. I'm developing a technology for that so that I can help more people, because there's just me and I need to be able to expand that. And then I am also working on my next book. And the next book is going to be Seller First. It is going to be written for managers Buyer First was for the salesperson, for the small business owner who's on the front line. How do you actually engage with people in ways that they're going to value today? How do you adopt those behaviors? And Seller First is, now that you've either a small business owner or startup founder where you want to scale your sales and you need to hire someone, you need to figure out how to manage them and how to coach them. How do you then create the environment as that middle manager or that startup founder? How do you create the environment that will allow your salespeople to be buyer first? Because what a lot of people don't realize is that, and I've seen this happen in my own practice, where salespeople will come to me for individual coaching, and then they'll go back into their companies and revert back to their old behaviors. It's almost like you're trying to lose weight and you're being surrounded by pepperoni pizza and, hot fudge brown sundaes. You're eventually going to slip back into your old ways. And so it's not enough just to train the salespeople. We also need to train and coach the managers on how to train and coach their people, and hiring the right people to begin with. And how do you create that? And then the next book after that will be Manager First for leaders, is how do you create the systems and processes and culture that all can actually live within. So working on the next book, creating the agentic AI for that. I am going to be next year starting to teach at the Emily on Business School in their Master of Sales Excellence program, which I'm super excited for. So I'm learning French. Je m'appelle la français. And let's see. I am also working on renovating our home, adding an addition and a garage on so I can get a bigger office and a bigger studio going. Have some executive retreats here because I live in the Maine woods with a lake and all of these trails, and really doing some deep dive retreats with people.
Have you hired Maine cabin masters to do that addition?
They are on my list. Actually, I want to hire Maine cabin masters because once I have the garage and the addition done, I want to put little cabins that are
Right.
people can go and not maybe rent out or be able to stay in. So yeah, there's a whole empire I have in my mind right now.
I just watched the first episode
Mm-hmm.
for fun, and they're on season 15.
Yeah, it's
Like that.
insane.
They've
But
changed
have
a
you
bit.
seen the one with the tree houses though?
No, I haven't.
I don't know if it's the same or if it's a spin-off of it, but they have another one where they're actually building tree houses in a
Treehouse
cabin.
Masters, yes.
Treehouse Masters, yes.
Yeah.
That's my other second major obsession.
You got a lot going on.
I always have a lot going on. I am not someone who sits still very well, which is something I'm working on.
What do you mean?
Meaning literally, when we're watching a movie with the family, for me to sit through a whole movie and not get up to go get something or to go do something is a miracle. I am in constant movement.
I got that part, but you said you're working on it.
I'm working on it. So I'm trying to get comfortable in stillness and in quiet where I don't have to feel like I'm moving forwards or doing something.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm starting, I have a morning routine where I get up and I do my yoga, meditation, journaling. I'm practicing my French lessons before I dive into the day. So I've started with that, and then, trying to get into now I'm taking weekends off, so I'm not working through the weekends. And so like any behavior, we're stacking the habits. So we started with the mornings. Now we extended mornings into weekends. I actually took a vacation this year, so we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. I ask you the question as someone who also can't sit still. I describe it as I'm like a shark in the water. If I stop swimming, I die.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and for me, it's if you go to my website, Unbound Growth, and you see the logo that's there, the logo is actually a Triskelion Celtic symbol modified.
Okay.
And the reason I chose that is because it's actually a symbol of constant motion, constant improvement, always trying to get better and progressive, which also can burn you out. And so there's a balance between that constant wanting to improve and that being able to not burn out. I have to give a shout out to my friend Katie McDonald because she's been one of the key people who is close enough to me that she can tell me to slow the hell down. And, for her, she talks about how self-care is not a guilty pleasure. It's our duty. We have to be able to take care of ourselves in order to show up for other people. And so that's something that I'm working on in small daily habits and taking those moments to just be present with my family, taking the holidays off and not thinking about what is it the next thing that I need to do. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I understand. I have a good friend, Alan Cantor, who 25 years ago called me up one day. We were in constant communications. He called me up. He said, "How you doing?" I said, "Alan, I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off." He said, "Call me when you're not. And he hung up. And I remember it like it happened this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And his message was the same. It's like,
Yeah.
chill the fuck out.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about when I left my ex-husband and actually moved in with my grandmother because she needed help going through knee surgeries and recovering from that. I had 2 kids. I was a single mom. I was going to school full time. I was working full time. I was taking care of my grandmother. I was trying to build a house at the time. And I remember my mother saying to me, "You're burning the candle at both ends and you're going to burn out." I said, no, Mom. I've taken that candle. I've broken it in half and I'm holding both of those ends on fire. But I'm like, what would you have me stop doing? Stop going to school so I can make a better life for my kids and family, or stop working so that I can pay my bills, or stop taking care of my grandmother who needs help through 2 knee surgeries. Like, there's none of these things that I can let go at this point. I don't know if that's unfortunate or not, but it has carried over into my adult life as well. But I am still proud of myself, the fact that I take my mornings and my weekends. I'm not working until 8 or 9 o'clock at night anymore. So I'm getting there. I still have a million projects, though, as I just described.
Yes, you do.
Yes. I'm always pushing the edge in some way because I get bored easily, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always find ways that something can be improved. And my husband is a very good balance for me in saying good enough can be good enough. And it's not a letting go. It's not a quitting. It's letting things be as they are.
Yeah. I like to improve things too. My daughter in middle school explained to her teacher and the special ed teacher, it's a circus in my head.
Yeah.
They got that she was working at 200 miles an hour and doing well and needed some support.
Yeah.
When she said it that way, it's like we all went, now we get it. She was the second of 3 diagnosed with ADHD in my family.
Yep.
First my son,
Yep.
then her. My wife looked around and said, "Where'd they get it from?"
Me.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, both of my sons also have ADHD. I was never diagnosed with it, but I'm pretty sure I would meet the threshold for it. But the other thing that's interesting is that all of the strategies that I've had to learn to calm down, to be present, are also the strategies that I now teach my clients because it shows up in sales, right? It shows up when you're constantly on the go and your mind is constantly worrying. If you're constantly having all of these thoughts in your head that you're listening to, you can't listen to the other person. You're not even in the same place with them. They're like, you're somewhere else. You're in the past or in the future, and they're right there. And when you're not in the present moment, that's what makes you slip up and missing the cues where you should be asking deeper questions, or you should be taking the cues that this is not really landing with them and you need to stop and pause for a moment. That's the magic in a sales conversation that most people don't see and skip over. But if you're listening to that call and you're watching in the recording of that call as an outside person, it's easy to spot.
Right. Absolutely. I have a coaching client who did a personal interest event. He and a friend have a podcast on watches. They did an event where a major watch vendor, a high-end watch vendor, sponsored an event, and they got 40 people into a room. The vendor talked about the product and shared some stuff. And one of the people at the event said, "I'm really interested in that watch." And the vendor salesperson said, "Oh, well, let me show you the other watches." And totally missed.
Right.
Put the $5,000 watch on her wrist.
And just stop talking.
Stop talking.
Yeah. Yep.
No sale.
No.
There was probably a pretty good likelihood that that was going to be a sale. They went right past it. They didn't.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't hear what the customer said.
And I've seen it happen where they've actually talked the customer out of purchasing. Last year, I bought a new car and went to a couple of dealerships. What I did was I found the car I wanted online and went directly to the dealership. Yep. They had it ready for me and I was driving it around. And what was interesting is that previously I had gone to another dealership and I thought I was going to buy that car. Salesperson says, "Well, I'm sure you want to go home and think about this." And I'm like, "No, I'm pretty sure that this is what I want to do." Like, no, I understand this is a big purchase and you want to go home and think about it. Like, they literally talked me out of it to the point that I went to another dealership to find the car that I wanted and bought it from them. In my practice, we call that the how you buy is how you sell.
I was thinking exactly that.
You want to make the decision based on all of the evidence everywhere else and compare it to everything and get the best price and get a discount. If you buy that way as a salesperson, you will sell that way as a salesperson.
Unless you're aware that you shouldn't.
Unless you change your own on the way you make your decisions and purchasing decisions, you'll always be susceptible to people who are going to do the same.
I have coached many, many, many salespeople to uncouple how they buy.
Yes.
From how they sell. The expectation of what their customers are going to want to do. Listen for what they say. Listen for how they want to buy. Ask them how they want to buy. Don't assume.
Yeah. Oh, God, assumptions are, you know what they say about assumptions. But it goes back to that not making it about you. Like you're projecting your beliefs onto someone else. You're projecting how much money you think is a lot of money because you're not used to that. Whereas for them, that's nothing. I encounter that a time and time again. And it's like a bad form of empathy that they have. The good news is that it's also the easiest one for you to fix. When you start changing how you make your own decisions, then it's a lot easier to help people make decisions that they're comfortable and confident in.
Where do we want to go from here? We've talked about so much good stuff, Carole. So for me, curiosity and authenticity
Yes.
are two of the key attributes. And I coach salespeople to be conscious of their context. And the context or your intent is written right on your forehead,
Yeah.
right? Or upside down on your shirt, as we talked about earlier.
Yep.
And if you walk in saying, I need to sell something today, no sale. If you walk in and your context is curiosity, I had a coaching client who started a meeting with senior VPs at a mutual insurance company. And the first question she asked was, I noticed that each of you has been with this company for more than 20 years. What keeps you here? 20 minutes later, they finished that conversation.
Yeah.
And oh boy, did they love her.
Yeah.
She said one thing and they talked for 20 minutes and they love her.
Yeah, there's some science behind that, which I can nerd out on later. But the thing that I find interesting is I just commented on LinkedIn, Beck Holland was talking about this, and she was talking about how we use tactics to get what we want, to manipulate people, to get them to do something. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a coaching client or a student say to me, how do I get them to blah, blah, blah? And I said, well, first you have to stop thinking about how you're going to get them to do anything because that's manipulation. You can take any tactic, good or bad, and depending on your intent in the action is how it's going to come across. You can use the exact same tactic to help someone, or you can use the exact same tactic to try to manipulate someone. And the only difference between a good salesperson and a con man is intent. And that's why I'm so emphatic about you have to make it not about you. You have to be willing to put what you want aside for the better of someone else. And until you're willing to do that, you shouldn't be in sales. If you're not willing to say no to someone because it's not the right fit for them, no matter what they say, contrary to what we were saying before about projecting, but if you know that it's not the right time, it's not the right fit, or they're not going to be successful with it, it is your ethical responsibility to tell them no. And I wish we had like an oath that like doctors had that we will never sell something to someone that they don't need.
Yeah. So I coach a handful of salespeople who work for a couple of very large companies.
Mm-hmm.
And for the past month, we've been doing role plays on how to say no, and not to customers, but to sales management.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not going to try to jam it down their throat before the end of the year.
Yep.
No, they don't want the extra discount. No, they're not going to say yes right now.
Mm-hmm.
And because the individual salespeople know, they have the perspective of the customer. And
Right.
if they try to jam something into Q4, they will lose. They will hurt the relationship with the customer.
Yep.
Customer's going to go, okay, thank you for that extra 20% discount. I'll collect that in March when we're actually going to buy.
Exactly. It's interesting because I was just talking with one of my clients earlier today. We do an assessment of any client that we work with. We use a sales specific assessment that not only talks about what their skills are, but what are we call it the sales DNA or the mindsets that they have. And these are things like the need for approval, managing our emotions in the moment, handling rejections, being comfortable talking about money. How we buy is how we sell. And the need for approval shows up when you're not willing to say no. And so a lot of times what I have my clients and students do is that if you're not comfortable saying no, then you need to start practicing saying no to people in your everyday life. Start setting boundaries, because when we have a need for approval, we want people to like us. We're more likely to say yes to things that we wouldn't normally say because we don't want to upset them, or we tell them what we think that they want to hear. And what happens is that they not only don't trust us, they don't believe anything that we say because we're just telling them what they want to hear because we're afraid of upsetting them.
Right.
And I can tell you that when I have said no to people that weren't good fits as a client, or I talk about this story in my book when my business was at a super low point and I thought I had to go get that 4-letter word that we call a job in entrepreneurship. And so I was doing interviews and my sister introduced me to her boss, and it was for a marketing position. And I had the interview. I was desperate to get some money in. And he said, I'm having a hard time making this decision. So between you and this other person. Now I knew who the other person was. My first instinct was to try to convince him of why he needed to hire me. And then I thought, you know what? This is my sister's boss. So if this doesn't work out, not only is it going to damage my relationship with her, it's going to damage her relationship with the boss. So I asked him the only question I could think of, which was, what is the most important aspect to be successful in this role? And when he told me that I was going to have to dress up in a mascot suit and go to the games around town, I was like, that is definitely not me. You should hire so-and-so because I know that that is their thing. And his response was, thank you so much for making this decision easier for me. I am going to go find who I can refer to you so that you can get some business in. And that's exactly what happened. So saying no builds instant trust and gets clear on what's going to be the best situation for you. But so often salespeople won't do that to their manager, to their buyers, or even in their everyday lives.
Right.
So that's one of the things I love doing is if you can practice this in your everyday life, it will be easier to do when you get into a sales conversation, which is more difficult. There's more pressure. And oh yeah, there's that whole thing about money and value that's going to be happening here, which people would rather talk about religion, sex, or politics before they talk about money. Money is the biggest contributor to divorce as well, because people won't talk about money with their spouse.
How do we get the younger generation of salespeople for whom maturity and self-awareness hasn't come yet? To be able to say no, to be able to be present, to be able to have the best intent. What's the magic wand, Carole?
Wish there was a magic wand. I call it a cognitive behavioral approach to sales. And I don't think it matters whether you are young and inexperienced or older. I think the older you are, the harder it's going to be because these have been ingrained inside of you and it's going to be harder to unlearn those things, right?
Agreed.
And so this is what I love about teaching the next generation is that I can teach them the techniques that they can use in their everyday lives that make it easier for them. So, the emotional stuff is, I talk in my book about meditation over a dozen times because of the neuroscience and the psychology behind it. That, even just taking a minute to do a breathing exercise will lower your heart rate. It will lower the mechanisms that are happening in your head that you will actually be able to make better decisions because of that simple breathing exercise. Or physical reminders to bring you back in the present moment. I used to always have an elastic on my wrist. So whenever I found myself checking out, I would literally snap myself back to the present. But the things that you do in your everyday life, like we were talking before about trying to slow down and doing those things, that's what I teach the next generation to do. Because I understand, you have all of this energy and all of this ambition and all of these things that you want to do. But we're also seeing, I think, an epidemic in the younger generation that are burning out because of the pressure that's having, the frustrations that they have, that they need to learn how to do these self-care routines and have healthy relationships and healthy boundaries with people, because that's what's going to serve them in being able to handle the complexity, the uncertainty, and the constant rejection of sales.
I love onboarding new salespeople. Monday morning, they're sitting in a conference room wearing the red class of t-shirt or whatever. And 3 weeks ago, they were at, senior week. And I tell them two things. One, selling is a profession and professionals practice their craft.
Exactly.
They don't just show up on game day and do shit. They practice their craft.
They watch their game tape. They get coaches. They have multiple coaches usually. I mean, we could talk about Tom Brady to the nth degree on this one, but, we'll save everyone the gushing.
The angst.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing I tell them is, even if you're working at a very large company, you might be the first brand touch that your customer ever experiences from this company. They may never have heard of bigcompanyincorporated.com, right? And you're their first touch. Be a professional, be polished, be prepared, be a human being, right? Be a listener.
Yep.
I love setting them off with that foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, I actually have one of my clients right now. It's a startup that they had just hired a gentleman who just came out of college. And they are literally a sponge. And if I could only have every client that I work with just that does exactly what I tell them to do, my life would be so much easier. But for the most part, that's what I find in new college graduates is that they are so grateful for it. They're also so eager to apply it. Like, how do I constantly learn? How do I constantly improve? And to your point, with the practice, I get this question a lot from my Harvard Business School students when they say, how can I get more practice reps in? We only have 6 weeks for us to do this. And I said, you know what the beauty of sales is that you can practice it on anyone around you at any time. I have had sales conversations with Uber drivers who then went on to become salespeople who still message me every once in a while about their sales success. Grocery store clerks, waiters and waitresses in restaurants, people that you're standing in line with, we are all salespeople. And we have been selling our entire lives, which means that we shouldn't be afraid of it. And we shouldn't be afraid to just have conversations with everyday people in ways that we're asking and being curious about them and asking more about them. And like you said before about like asking that one question that gets them talking for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The science shows that when you get other people to talk about what they think, it lights up the dopamine in their head, which comes from the area of our brain where we build trust and relationships with people, which is why so many salespeople, they go into a conversation and they do all of the talking and they think it was a great conversation because they were doing all of the talking. They were hogging all the dopamine from their buyers. But when you get your buyers to share, that's when you start to build trust and relationships. And of course, you need to do more than that, but that's the start.
Yeah, the less you talk, the better it goes.
Generally speaking.
I had a dinner last night with a coaching client at the Atlantic Fish Company in Boston on Boylston. And shout out to Kristen, our server. I asked Kristen, what's your favorite fish dish here? And she went through 3 or 4, maybe 5. She didn't answer the question. She was energetic and enthusiastic and passionate about multiple dishes. We thought about it for a bit. And then I said, so salmon or tuna? And before I finished the sentence, tuna.
So I grew up working in restaurants, but front of the house, back of the house, I've worked every job in a restaurant. I loved waiting tables, which seems crazy to some people. Like I would actually just do it for fun for friends that had restaurants because it was like having a great big dinner party with new friends for me. And I would have regulars that would come in and just sit down and say, so what am I eating today? You pick for me. You know what I like. You know what I don't like. And they would just say, I don't want to decide. Can you decide for me?
I love asking that question, walking in and saying, here are the boundaries.
Yep.
Right? I won't eat scallops. I won't eat blah, blah, blah. Aside from that, just surprise me.
Right. Yeah.
And I was going to say salespeople, some wait people won't take that on.
Yeah.
The good ones do.
The good ones do.
The good ones do.
I was in France with Lauren Bailey and Anna Bard from our Legacy Group Club. Shout out to them. And some of the best dining experiences, no surprise, but some of the best dining experiences I've had. And that's what it was like because I don't understand everything on the menu and Google Translate can only go so far. And so the best waiters and waitresses were the ones that asked questions about what I liked and then said, here's what I would recommend that you have. And I didn't have a single bad meal the entire time I was there.
I would hire Kristen in a minute for any enterprise team.
Yeah.
Because, passion, energy, enthusiasm, and product knowledge.
Well, and it's funny. So part of my work that I do with clients is not just coaching salespeople, but also coaching and training leaders on how to hire salespeople. And where do you find your best recruits? And a lot of times my go-to is, do you have a favorite waiter or waitress? Go hire them for sales because that's what they're doing.
So I ran sales for by appointment only years ago. Henry, I can't remember his last name. Henry was the recruiter for the people that did the work, who made 250 calls a day, setting appointments. I would frequently onboard some of those folks, landscapers, hairstylists, real estate people, and there was no rhyme or reason to the titles. And wouldn't you know it, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 were successful. Henry had a format that he looked for, a template that he matched. No matter where they came from, he was looking for a series of skills and attitudes that would make someone successful in that high pressure environment.
Yeah. And that is exactly what I teach when I'm teaching leaders on how to hire. First, we go through a detailed list of what are the criteria for someone to be successful in this role. And when I say successful in this role, it's not just what are they selling and how much are they selling it for, but what's the level of competition that they're going to face? How are they going to be managed in this environment? Who are they used to selling to? What are the people that they're going to be needing to sell to? What's this type of sale? Like, are they going to be selling and moving on, or are they going to sell and actually service them as well? And so it's very specific to that. And so then when we hire, we use the assessment to match against do they have the aptitude, the attitude, the skill set to be successful in this role? Because hiring from your competition is not a guarantee of success.
Absolutely
because their
not.
company is not your company. Their buyer might not be exactly your buyer, even though you think that they're a competitor. So I just that's my other, I think, part of the passion is helping companies to stop churning through salespeople and hire the right people for the role so that you can see the results that you're looking for. It's why I often say, and this is kind of the premise for the next book, is that companies often create the problems that they try to solve for later on. And they don't even realize it.
I worked with Dave Curlin at Objective Management Group years ago.
That's the one I use. Yeah.
Yeah. He profiled my team by appointment only. Then he profiled the managers, of which I was one. It's like, oh my God.
Well, and so
I got some work
interesting
to
thing
do.
about the data. So because I'm a partner with theirs as well, so they let me do some analysis of my own.
Yeah.
And so a couple of years ago, I did an analysis because we've all heard the phrase, as goes the manager, so goes the team. And we can observe that, but like how true is that in sales? And so I did an analysis. I took 500,000 managers and the teams that reported directly to those managers. And what I found is that when managers had certain non-supportive beliefs or mindsets about sales, that their team was 355% more likely to hold the same negative beliefs, which impacted their skills. However, managers who had supportive mindsets and beliefs were 1,000% more likely to pass it on to their teams, and those teams perform better.
Mm-hmm.
The bad news is that only 7% of the managers out of the 500,000 we evaluated have the positive mindsets.
Yeah.
And so it's a huge impact that managers have. Like I was talking about before, you train up a salesperson, they go back into their company and they're surrounded by cake and pizza. They're going to regress back to their old ways. We have to make sure that the managers are the ones that are influencing their teams in positive ways and not creating more problems.
Yeah. The confounding variable there, Carole, is many managers, perhaps most managers, come from the sales team. They're the lone wolves that were successful in spite of everything. Oh, you were 150% a quota for 5 years. You should be a manager. You should sign
And then
expensive
the manager
for other
doesn't
people.
understand why everyone just doesn't do it the way that they did it. It's the
Right.
the other sign of what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where, Dunning-Kruger is that when the less experience that you have, the more likely you are to be overconfident in your skills. But the other side of that most people don't talk about is that when you are at that level where you are an expert at it, you can't understand why someone else doesn't get it.
It's the unconsciously incompetent to the consciously competent, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle that you have to go through.
Yeah. And the other thing is that being a top salesperson is a completely different mindset and skill set than being a top manager. So in Objective Management Group, we talk about the need for approval. And in salespeople, it causes them to not get to decision makers, to not ask tough questions. They think people need to like them. But in management, it prevents them from having tough conversations with their salespeople. So same mindset, different application, different context has a different result.
When I was running the advisory practice at IDC, people would ask me about leading indicators for sales results.
Yep.
And I said, in literally any size company, any industry, the percentage of time spent coaching by sales managers is probably the single biggest leading indicator. And if you, my beat is technology, if you survey every single sales manager in the industry and average out the amount of time spent coaching, the average would approximate zero.
Yeah. So
Zero.
I'm going to give you just a little bit of pushback on that because I'm a nerd. So you're going to let me nerd out.
Yeah,
so
please.
Same thing is that same analysis that I did about my managers in that. What I then did in another analysis, because we'd all heard that if managers spend at least 30% of their time or whatever it is, a number of hours, that their sales teams are going to improve. I was like, okay, is that really true for all managers though? So I did an analysis and found that managers who spent a certain amount of time, that the variable difference was managers who had been trained on how to coach and did it consistently were the ones that saw the results. So it's not just a matter of how much time they spend, but what is the quality and context of the time that they're spending?
Do they have the tools? Do they have the training? Do they have the aptitude? Do they have the interest and desire? Or are they just getting through coaching so they can get back to inspecting?
Right. Or does coaching sound like, like they're not actually coaching. They're telling them what they did wrong and what they should have done. They're not actually helping them to develop skills through role play, through question asking, through helping them dive into so what was going on in your head when you did this? How are we going to change that going forward? Where does that come from for you? That's what coaching is about, is asking questions that make people realize something, not telling them what they should be doing.
You suck at this, get better. That's not coaching.
That's not helpful. You need to make 100 more calls a day. Not helpful.
One of my favorite coaching moments, 13-year-old soccer player comes running off the field saying, Mr. Levitt, it worked. We scored. It worked just like we practiced. It's like,
imagine that.
Imagine that.
What's interesting, I find, is, and this is the other reason why I'm starting to leverage AI, because and even Stephanie Boyer has talked about how many times we need to repeat a practice before it becomes a skill. And managers only have so much time. They're being pulled in multiple directions. Not only have they not been trained on how to coach, they're not afforded the time to actually learn to do it because managers is pulling them in, or leadership is pulling them in all these other directions. Another topic, another story. But what I've also found is that you can practice something And even when it doesn't go the way that you practiced, because you practiced it, you know where to pivot, you know where to be able to move into something. And that's kind of the thing of like too much practice or too much preparation can put some salespeople in this is the, like me with my sheet music, it has to go this way.
We don't want to burn a track too deep.
Right, exactly. We want to be able to know enough to be able to improv it in the moment, but not so much that we're like you said, we're in the rut that this is how it's going to go and we can't deviate from that.
Yeah. I love being in the moment with customers. And I've said some things to customers in the moment that, oh my God, I would never have planned to say that.
I have done that as well. I've blown up deals that way, but for a good reason.
The couple that I'm thinking of, they were the right things to say at the time. I was on a call with decent sized prospect for the Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse. I was the overlay. I wasn't the salesperson. Customer said, well, we're too far along with our plans to change, which is like, and the salesperson was saying, well, go back and change, right? There goes all the internal relationship capital. And the customer said, well, maybe we'll bring you in for phase 2. And the sales rep got all happy ears. And I said, here's the truth. You're going to get 80% of your value from phase 1. And that's enough. Let's agree to part friends. And the salesperson looks at me and says, what are you doing? It's like, I'm telling the truth.
Yeah. I'm saying no because it's not the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And, all happy years, it's like, no, I've seen this movie play out 100 times. Nobody ever goes to phase 2. I mean, a few do, but the reality is
very few.
And, so here's selling 101 in the tech world. Whatever you have right now, that was a bad decision. You probably didn't spend any time thinking about it when you made that decision. Now we want you to not spend any time thinking about it and choose us.
Because we're better.
You were stupid before.
Take my word for it.
You were stupid before. Now you found us. Literally, I've heard that 1,000 times.
I have too.
Not in exactly those words, but that was the intent behind it.
Yeah. And again, we come back to the intent, right? Is the intent to be curious and helpful, or is the intent to get your stuff bought, to get what you want out of them, to get them to do something? And that is what is wrong with sales.
Yeah. And in large organizations, I've been involved in global sales enablement, planning and delivery. And much of it is, here's our product. And almost none of it is, here's how you should think about the customer.
Oh my gosh. This is my biggest pet peeve on onboarding programs. And it is another reason why I wrote the book Buyer First, because so many onboarding programs starts with product, our process, our systems, and oh yeah, by the way, this is who our buyer is. It should be 80% on the buyer and immersion into their world and understanding them, and then everything else should be flowing from that. I have yet to see an onboarding program that is designed that way until I help them do it.
I reworked the global enablement at Google, where the product managers would come to me and go, here's our 90-slide deck about our latest blah, blah, blah. And I would say, okay, you have 15 slides. The first 5 are about the market. And I don't want to see TAM because no salesperson ever cared about TAM. It's pick a couple of ICPs and describe their environment. Then a couple of slides about what we do and how it's relevant. And then the rest is, how do I get help? What are the right words? Who are the right people? How do I get help? And that was a huge revelation for the product management at Google. But it's just about us. It's like, well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah. And the thing is it also doesn't stick. It's not applied to the context of the person they're going to be talking to. Like ideally, if you don't have an onboarding program that equips your sellers to have initial conversations with your ideal customer by the end of the week, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Carole, you've got some passion for this.
A little bit. I go back to that we're all salespeople, right? We've been selling our entire lives.
Yeah.
Yet when you ask anyone, like ask a kid today what they want to be when they grow up, none of them are going to say, I want to be a salesperson. And that's what I want to change, because sales is a noble environment. And if you think about it, sales is all about connecting problems and solutions. And isn't that how we make the world a better place? By fixing things, by making them better. And I guess that goes back to my constant wanting to improve it all the time. This is the other thing for me as well, is that sales is all about behavior change. Right? We're trying to help our buyers change a behavior. And we also need to change our behaviors. And so understanding the psychology and the neuroscience behind behavior change has been key for me, because that is what we're trying to do every day in sales. And change is hard. Change is scary and it's personal. And so we have to be able to be comfortable getting to that level with people, because otherwise it's just surface level bullshit.
I'm with you. Jeff Lipsius says the purpose of selling is not selling. It's buying.
Helping people buy.
It's buying.
Yeah. And buying is about solving problems. If you're not solving a problem, then we're just filling a landfill with crap.
And the original definition of to sell is to
an
give.
Exchange of value. Yeah. It's an exchange.
It's to give. Yeah. It's not to take. It's to give.
Right. And help. And what's ironic is that's what sales started as. But when the Depression happened and warehouses were full of inventory and companies were desperate for sales, they said, we're going to pay you on commission and do whatever you have to do to sell it. And so now we have the pushy, sleamy, slizy, whatever salesperson as a result of that. And we need to realize that it needs to do a complete 360 again.
Some will, some
won't. Move on to the next one.
Carole, this has been a fabulous conversation.
Yes.
Where can people find you?
Well, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, which is where I spend most of my social media time. And then also
Carole with an E.
Carole with an E and Mahoney with an E. Don't forget both of the E's.
Mm-hmm.
You can also find me on my corporate training website at unboundgrowth.com or my speaker website, which is carolemahoney.com.
Thank you for the time. This has been a fabulous conversation. We need to spend some more time working on our combined focus of fixing and improving how salespeople think and feel.
Yes, I'm building my tribe.
Exactly. Thanks, Carole. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Lee. It was also a pleasure.
Cheers. Another deep dive into the topic of sales excellence and the performance mindset. If you found this conversation interesting, I would appreciate it if you would share the podcast with a coworker or two. And to explore this topic in more depth, send me a note via the contact form on podcast.thoughtsonselling.com or find some time for us to talk at meet.acellergroup.com. Thanks.